Anne Frank, middle of page 281. Sunday morning, May 7th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, Father and I had a long talk yesterday afternoon. I cried my eyes out, and he cried too. Do you know what he said to me, Kitty? I received many letters in my lifetime, but none as hurtful as this. You who have had so much love from your parents, you whose parents have always been ready to help you, who have always defended you no matter what, you talk of not having to account for us for your actions. You feel you've been wronged and left to your own devices. Now, Anne, you've done us a great injustice. Perhaps you didn't mean it that way, but that's what you wrote. No, Anne, we have done nothing to deserve such a reproach. Oh, I've failed miserably. This is the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. I used my tears to show off, to make myself seem important so he'd respect me. I've certainly had my share of unhappiness, and everything I said about mother is true, but to accuse Pym, who's so good and who's done everything for me, no, that was too cruel for words. It's good that somebody has finally cut me down to size, has broken my pride, because I've been far too smug. Not everything Mistress Anne does is good. Anyone who deliberately causes such pain to someone they say they love is despicable, the lowest of the low. What I'm most ashamed of is the way Father has forgiven me. He said he's going to throw the letter in the stove, and he's being so nice to me now. And if he were the one who'd done something wrong, well, Anne, you still have a lot to learn. It's time you made a beginning instead of looking down at other people and always blaming them. I've known a lot of sorrow, but who hasn't at my age? I've been putting on an act, but was hardly even aware of it. I felt lonely, but never desperate. Not like Father, who once ran out into the street with a knife so he could put an end to it all. I've never gone that far. I should be deeply ashamed of myself, and I am. What's done can't be undone, but at least you can keep it from happening again. I'd like to start all over, and that shouldn't be difficult, now that I have Peter. With him supporting me, I know I can do it. I'm not alone anymore. He loves me. I love him. I have my books, my writing, and my diary. I'm not at all that ugly or that stupid. I have a sunny disposition, and I want to develop a good character. Yes, Anne, you knew full well that your letter was unkind and untrue, but you were actually proud of it. I'll take Father as my example once again, and I will improve myself. Yours, Anne Frank. Monday, May 8th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, have I ever told you anything about our family? I don't think I have, so let me begin. Father was born in Frankfurt, in Maine, to very wealthy parents. Michael Frank owned a bank and became a millionaire. Natalie Stern's parents were prominent and well-to-do. Michael Frank didn't start out rich. He was a self-made man. In his youth, Father led the life of a rich man's son. Parties every week, balls, banquets, beautiful girls, waltzing, dinners, a huge house, etc. After Grandpa died, most of the money was lost, and after the Great War and inflation, there was nothing left at all. Up until the war, there were still quite a few rich relatives, so Father was extremely well bred, and he had to laugh yesterday because for the first time in his 55 years, he scraped out the frying pan at the table. Mother's family wasn't as wealthy, but still fairly well off, and we've listened up to mouth time to stories of private balls, dinners, and engagement parties with 250 guests. We're far from rich now, but I've pinned all my hopes on after the war. I can assure you I'm not so set on a bougie life as Mother and Margot. I'd like to spend a year in Paris and London learning the languages and studying art history. Compare that with Margot, who wants to nurse newborns in Palestine. I still have visions of gorgeous dresses and fascinating people. As I've told you many times before, I want to see the world and do all kinds of exciting things, and a little money won't hurt. This morning Eve told us about her cousin's engagement party, which she went to on Saturday. The cousin's parents are rich, and the grooms are even richer. We made our mouths water telling us about the food that was served: vegetable soup with meatballs, cheese, rolls with sliced meat, hors d'oeuvres made with eggs and roast beef, rolls with cheese, Genoise, wine, and cigarettes, and you could eat as much as you wanted. Meep drank 10 schnapps and smoked 3 cigarettes. Could this be our temperance advocate? If Meep drank all those, I wonder how many her spouse managed to toss down. Everyone at the party was a little tipsy. Of course, there were also 2 officers from the homicide squad who took photographs of the wedding couple. You can see we're never far from Meep's thoughts, since she promptly noted their names and addresses in case anything should happen and we needed contacts with good Dutch people. Our mouths were watering so much. We who had nothing but 2 spoonfuls of hot cereal for breakfast and were absolutely famished. We who get nothing but half-cooked spinach for the vitamins and rotten potatoes day after day. We who fill our empty stomachs with nothing but boiled lettuce, raw lettuce, spinach, and more spinach. Maybe we'll end up being as strong as Popeye, though up to now I've seen no sign of it. If Meep had taken us along to the party, there wouldn't have been any rolls left over for the other guests. If we'd been there, we'd have snatched up everything in sight, including the furniture, I tell you. We were practically pulling the words right out of her mouth. We were gathered around her as if we'd never in our lives heard of delicious food or elegant people. And these are the granddaughters of the distinguished millionaire. The world is a crazy place. Yours, Anne and Frank. Tuesday, May 9th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, I finished my story about Ellen the fairy. I've copied it out on nice notepaper, decorated it with red ink, and sewn the pages together. The whole thing looks quite pretty, but I don't know if it's enough of a birthday present. Margot and Mother have both written poems. Mr. Cougar came upstairs this afternoon with the news that starting Monday, Miss Brox would like to spend 2 hours in the office every afternoon. Just imagine. The office staff won't be able to come upstairs. The potatoes can't be delivered. Beth won't get her dinner. We can't go to the bathroom. We won't be able to move, and all sorts of other inconveniences. We proposed a variety of ways to get rid of her. Mr. Van Dam thought a good laxative in her coffee might do the trick. No, Mr. Kleiman answered, please don't, or we'll never get her off the can. A roar of laughter. The can? Miss Van D asked. What does that mean? An explanation was given. Is it all right to use that word? She asked in perfect innocence. Just imagine, Beth giggled. There you are, shopping at the Bischkopf, and you ask the way to the can. They wouldn't even know what you were talking about. Dusselnuss sits on the can, to borrow the expression, every day at 12:30 on the dot. This afternoon I boldly took a piece of pink paper and wrote, Mr. Dussel's toilet timetable. Mornings from 7:15 to 7:30 a.m. Afternoons after 1 p.m., otherwise only as needed. I tacked this to the green bathroom door while he was still inside. I might well have added, transgressors will be subject to confinement, because our bathroom can be locked from both the inside and the outside. Mr. Van Dam's latest joke. After a Bible lesson about Adam and Eve, a 13-year-old boy asked his father, Tell me, father, how did I get born? Well, the father replied, the stork pluckered you out of the ocean, set you down in mother's bed, and bit her in the leg hard. It bled so much she had to stay in bed for a week. Not fully satisfied, the boy went to his mother. Tell me, mother, he asked, how did you get born, and how did I get born? His mother told him the very same story. Finally, hoping to hear the fine points, he went to his grandfather. Tell me, grandfather, he said, how did you get born, and how did your daughter get born? And for the 3rd time, he was told exactly the same story. That night he wrote in his diary, after careful inquiry, I must conclude there has been no sexual intercourse in our family for the last 3 generations. I still have work to do. It's already 3 o'clock. Yours, Anne and Frank. P.S. Since I think I've mentioned the new cleaning lady, I just wanted to note that she's married, 60 years old, and hard of hearing. Very convenient in view of all the noise that 8 people in hiding are capable of making. Oh, Kit, it's such a lovely weather. If only I could go outside. Wednesday, May 10th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, we were sitting in the attic yesterday afternoon working on our French when suddenly I heard the splatter of water behind me. I asked Peter what it might be. Without pausing to reply, he dashed up to the loft, the scene of the disaster, and shoved Moochie, who was squatting beside her soggy litter box, back to the right place. This was followed by shouts and squeals, and then Moochie, who by that time had finished peeing, took off downstairs and searched for something similar to her box. Moochie had found herself a pile of wood shavings right over a crack in the floor. The puddle immediately trickled down to the attic, and as luck would have it, landed in and next to the potato barrel. The ceiling was dripping, and since the attic floor has also got its share of cracks, little yellow drops were leaking through the ceiling and into the dining table, between a pile of stockings and books. I was doubled up with laughter. It was such a funny sight. There was Moochie crouched under a chair, Peter armed with water, powdered bleach, and a cloth, and Mr. Van Dam trying to calm everyone down. The room was soon set to rights, but it is a well-known fact that cat puddles stink to high heaven. The potatoes proved that all too well, as did the wood shavings, which Father collected in a bucket and brought downstairs to burn. Poor Moochie, how were you to know it was impossible to get peat for your box? Thursday, May 11th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, a new sketch to make you laugh. Peter's hair had to be cut, and as usual, his mother was to be the hairdresser. At 7:35, Peter vanished into his room and reappeared at the stroke of 7:30, stripped down to his blue swimming trunks and a pair of tennis shoes. Are you coming? He asked his mother. Yes, I'll be up in a minute, but I can't find the scissors. Peter helped her look, rummaging around in her cosmetics drawer. Don't make such a mess, Peter, she grumbled. I didn't catch Peter's reply, but it must have been insolent because she cuffed him on the arm. He cuffed her back. She punched him with all her might, and Peter pulled his arm away with a look of mock horror on his face. Come on, old girl. Miss Van D stayed put. Peter grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her all around the room. She laughed, cried, scolded, and kicked, but nothing helped. Peter led his prisoner as far as the attic stairs, where he was obliged to let go of her. Miss Van D came back to the room and collapsed into a chair with a loud sigh. Different look, I joked. Yes, but he hurt me. I went to have a look and cooled her hot, red wrists with water. Peter, still by the stairs and growing impatient again, strode into the room with his belt in his hand, like a lion tamer. Miss Van D didn't move, but stayed by her writing desk, looking for her handkerchief. You've got to apologize first. All right, I hereby offer my apologies, but only because if I don't, we'll be here till midnight. Miss Van D had to laugh in spite of herself. She got up and went towards the door, where she felt obliged to give an explanation. By us, I mean Father, Mother, and me. We were busy doing the dishes. He wasn't like this at home, she said. I'd have belted him so hard he'd have gone flying down the stairs. He's never been so insolent. This isn't the first time he's deserved a good hiding. That's what you get with a modern upbringing, modern children. I'd never have grabbed my mother like that. Did you treat your mother that way, Mr. Frank? She was very upset, pacing back and forth, saying whatever came into her head, and she still hadn't gone upstairs. Finally, at long last, she made her exit. Less than 5 minutes later, she stormed back down the stairs with her cheeks all puffed out and flung her apron on a chair. When I asked if she was through, she replied that she was going downstairs. She tore down the stairs like a tornado, probably straight into the arms of her pootie. She didn't come up again until 8. This time, with her husband, Peter was dragged from the attic, given a merciless scolding, and showered with abuse. Ill-mannered brat, no good bum, bad example, and this, Margot that, I couldn't hear the rest. Everything's to have calmed down again today. Yours, Anna Frank. P.S. Tuesday and Wednesday evening, our beloved Queen addressed the country. She's taking vacation, so she'll be in good health for her return to the Netherlands. She used words like soon, when I'm back in Holland, a swift liberation, heroism, and heavy burdens. This was followed by a speech by Prime Minister Gerbrandy. He has such a squeaky little child's voice that Mother instinctively said, ooh. A clergyman who must have borrowed his voice from Mr. Edel concluded by asking God to take care of the Jews, all those in concentration camps and prisons, and everyone working in Germany. Thursday, May 11th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, since I left my entire junk box including my fountain pen, upstairs, and I'm not allowed to disturb the grown-ups during their nap time until 2:30. You'll have to make do with a letter and pencil. I'm terribly busy at the moment, and strange as it may sound, I don't have enough time to get through my pile of work. Shall I tell you briefly what I've got to do? Well then, before tomorrow I have to finish reading the first volume of biography of Gilly, since it has to be returned to the library. I started reading yesterday and have gotten to page 220 out of 320 pages, so I'll manage it. Next week I have to read Palestine at the Crossroads and the second volume of Galetti. Besides that, I finished the first volume of biography of Emperor Charles V yesterday, and I still have to work out the many genealogical charts I've collected and the notes I've taken. Next, I have 3 pages of foreign words from my various books, all of which have to be written down, memorized, and read aloud. Number 4. My movie stars are in terrible disarray and are dying to be straightened out. But since it'll take several days to do that, and Professor Ann is, and she's already said, up to her ears in work, they'll have to be put up with the chaos a little longer. Then there are Theseus, Oedipus, Helios, Ophelus, Jason, and Hercules, all waiting to be untangled, since their various deeds are running crisscross through my mind like multicolored threads in a dress. Myron and Phidias are also urgently in need of attention, or else I'll forget entirely how they fit into the picture. The same applies, for example, to the 7 Years' War and the 9 Years' War. Now I'm getting everything all mixed up. Well, what can you do with a memory like mine? Just imagine how forgetful I'll be when I'm 80. Oh, one more thing, the Bible. How long is it going to take before I come to the story of the bathing Susanna? And what do they mean by Sodom and Gomorrah? Oh, there's still so much to find out and learn. And in the meantime, I've left Charlotte of the Palestine in the lurch. You can see, you can't you, Kitty, that I'm full to bursting. And now something else. You know, for a long time, that my greatest wish is to be a journalist and later on a famous writer. We'll have to wait and see if these grand illusions or delusions will ever come true. But up to now, I've had no lack of topics. In any case, after the war, I'd like to publish a book called The Secret Annex. It remains to be seen whether I'll succeed, but my diary can serve as the basis. I also need to finish Katie's life. I've thought about up the rest of the plot. After being cursed in the sanatorium, Katie goes back home and continues writing to Hans in 1941, and it doesn't take her long to discover Hans' Nazi sympathies. And since Katie is deeply concerned with the plight of the Jews and her friend Marianne, they began drifting apart. They meet and get back together, but break up when Hans takes up with another girl. Katie is shattered, and because she wants to have a good job, she studies nursing. After graduation, she accepts a position at the urging of her father's friend as a nurse in a TB sanatorium in Switzerland. During her first vacation, she goes to Lake Como, where she runs into Hans. He tells her that 2 years earlier he'd married Katie's successor, but that his wife took her life in a fit of depression. Now that he's seen his little Katie again, he realizes how much he loves her, and once more asks for her hand in marriage. Katie refuses, even though, in spite of herself, she loves him as much as ever, but her pride holds her back. Hans goes away, and years later Katie learns that he's wound up in England, where he's struggling with ill health. When she is 27, Katie marries a well-to-do man from the country named Simon. She grows to love him, but not as much as Hans. She has 2 daughters and a son, Lillian, Judith, and Nico. She and Simon are happy together, but Hans is always in the back of her mind until one night she dreams of him and says farewell. It's not sentimental nonsense. It's based on the story of father's life. Yours, Anne and Frank. Saturday, May 13th, 1944. My dearest Kitty, yesterday was Father's birthday. Father and Mother's 19th wedding anniversary, a day without the cleaning lady, and the sun was shining as it never shone before in 1944. Our chestnut tree is in full bloom. It's covered with leaves and is even more beautiful than last year. Father received a biography of Linnaeus from Mr. Kleinman, a book on nature from Miss Kluger, the Candles of Amsterdam from Dussel, a huge box from the Van Dans, wrapped so beautifully it might have been done by a professional. containing 3 eggs, a bottle of beer, a jar of yogurt, and a green tie. It made our jar of molasses seem rather paltry. My roses smelled wonderful compared to Meep and Bep's red carnations. He was thoroughly spoiled. 50 petits fours arrived from Simoneau's bakery. Delicious. Father also treated us to spice cake. The men to beer and the ladies to yogurt. Everything was scrumptious. Yours, Anne and Frank. Tuesday, May 16th, 1944. My dearest Kitty, just for a change, since we haven't had one of these in so long, I'll recount a little discussion between Mr. and Miss Van D. last night. Miss Van D., the Germans have had plenty of time to fortify the Atlantic Wall, and they'll certainly do everything within their power to hold back the British. It's amazing how strong the Germans are. Miss Van D., oh yes, amazing. Miss Van D., it is. Mr. Van D. is so strong, they're bound to win the war in the end. Is that what you mean? Miss Van D., they might. I'm not convinced that they won't. Mr. Van D., I won't even answer that. Miss Van D., you always wind up answering. You let yourself get carried away every single time. Mr. Van D., no, I don't. I always keep my answers to the bare minimum. Miss Van D., but you always do have an answer, and you always have to be right. Your predictions hardly ever come true, you know. Mr. Van D., so far they have. Miss Van D., no, they haven't. You said the invasion was going to start last year. The Finns were supposed to have been out of the war by now. The Italian campaign ought to have been over by last winter. And the Russians should have already been captured Lemberg. Oh no, I don't set such store by your predictions. Miss Van D., leaping to his feet. Why don't you shut your trap for a change? I'll show you who's right. Someday you'll get tired of needling me. I can't stand your belly aching a minute longer. Just wait. One day I'll make you eat your words. End of Act 1. Actually, I couldn't help giggling. Mother couldn't either. And even Peter was biting his lip to keep from laughing. Oh, those stupid grown-ups. They need to learn a few things before they start making so many remarks about the younger generation. Since Friday, we've been keeping the windows open again at night. Yours, Anne and Frank. What are Anne's families interested in? A systematic survey of courses in reading matter. Mr. Van Dam, no courses, looks up many things in the Canards Encyclopedia and Lexicon, likes to read detective stories, medical books, and love stories, exciting or trivial. Miss Van Dam, a correspondence course in England, likes to read biographical novels and occasional other kinds of novels. Mr. Frank is learning English, Dickens, and a bit of Latin. Never reads novels, but likes serious, rather dry descriptions of people and places. Miss Frank, a correspondence course in English, reads everything except detective stories. Mr. Dussel is learning English, Spanish, and Dutch, with no noticeable results, reads everything, goes along with the opinion of the majority. Peter Van Dam is learning English, French, correspondence course, shorthand in Dutch, English, and German, commercial correspondence in English, woodworking, economics, and sometimes math. Hold'em reads sometimes geography. Margot Frank, correspondence course in English, French, and Latin, shorthand in English, German, and Dutch, trigonometry, solid geometry, mechanics, physics, chemistry, algebra, geometry, English literature, French literature, German literature, Dutch literature, bookkeeping, geography, modern history, biography, economics, reads everything, preferably on religion and medicine. And Frank, shorthand in French, English, German, and Dutch, geometry, algebra, history, geography, art, history, mythology, biology, Bible history, Dutch literature, likes to read biographies, dull or exciting, and history books, sometimes novels, and light reading. Friday, May 19th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, I felt rotten yesterday, vomiting, me of all people, headache, stomachache, and anything else you can imagine. I'm feeling better today. I'm famished, but I think I'll skip the beans we're having for dinner. Everything's going fine between Peter and me. The poor boy has an even greater need for tenderness than I do. He still blushes every evening when he gets his good night kiss, and then begs for another one. Am I merely a better substitute for Boucher? I don't mind. He's so happy just knowing somebody loves him. After my laborious conquest, I have distanced myself a little from the situation, but you mustn't think my love has cooled. Peter's a sweetheart, but I've slammed the door to my inner self. If he ever wants to force the lock again, he'll have to use a harder crowbar. Yours, Anne and Frank. Saturday, May 20th, 1944. Dearest Kitty, last night when I came down from the attic, I noticed the moment I entered the room that a lovely vase of carnations had fallen over. Mother was down on her hands and knees mopping up the water, and Margot was fishing my papers off the floor. What happened? I asked with anxious foreboding, and before they could reply, I assessed the damage from across the room. My entire genealogy file, my notebook, my books, everything was afloat. I nearly cried, and I was so upset I started speaking German. I can't remember a word, but according to Margot, I babbled something about and much more. Father burst out laughing, and Mother and Margot joined in, but I felt like crying because all my work and elaborate notes were lost. I took a closer look, and luckily, the incapable loss wasn't as bad as I'd expected. Up in the attic, I carefully peeled apart the sheets of paper that were stuck together, and then hung them on the clothesline to dry. It was such a funny sight, even I had to laugh. Mary de Charles V, William of Orange, and Marie Antoinette. It's Reschnote, Mr. Van Dam joked. After entrusting my papers to Peter's care, I went back downstairs. Which books are ruined? I asked Margot, who was going through them. Algebra, Margot said. But as luck would have it, my algebra book wasn't entirely ruined. I wish it had fallen right in the vase. I've never loathed any book as much as that one. Inside the front cover are the names of at least 20 girls who had it before I did. It's old, yellowed, full of scribbles, crossed out words, and revisions. The next time I'm in a wicked mood, I'm going to tear that darn thing to pieces. Yours, Anne and Frank. Monday, May 22nd, 1944. Dearest Kitty, on May 20th, Father lost his bet and had to give 5 jars of yogurt to Miss Van Dam. The invasion still hasn't begun. I can safely say that all of Amsterdam, all of Holland, in fact, the entire western quarters of Europe, all the way down to Spain, are talking about the invasion day and night, debating, making bets, and hoping. The suspense is rising to fever pitch. By no means has everyone we think of as good Dutch people kept their faith in the English. Not everyone thinks the English bluff is a masterful strategical move. Oh no, people want deeds, great heroic deeds. No one can see further than the end of their nose. No one gives a thought to the fact that the British are fighting for their own country and their own people. Everyone thinks it's England's duty to save Holland as quickly as possible. What obligations do the English have towards us? What have the Dutch done to deserve the generous help they so clearly expect? Oh no, the Dutch are very much mistaken. The English, despite their bluff, are certainly no more to blame for the war than all the other countries, large and small, that are now occupied by the Germans. The British are not about to offer their excuses. True, they were sleeping during the years Germany was rearming itself, but all the other countries, especially those bordering on Germany, were asleep too. England and the rest of the world have discovered that burying your head in the sand doesn't work, and now each of them, especially England, is having to pay a heavy price for its ostrich policy. No country sacrifices men without reason, and certainly not in the interest of another. And England is no exception. The invasion, liberation, and freedom will come someday, yet England, not the occupied territories, will choose the moment. To our great sorrow and dismay, we've heard that many people have changed their attitude towards us Jews. We've been told that anti-Semitism has cropped up in circles where once it would have been unthinkable. This fact has affected us all very, very deeply. The reason for the hatred is understandable, maybe even human, but that doesn't make it right. According to the Christians, the Jews are blabbing their secrets to the Germans, denouncing their helpers and causing them to suffer the dreadful fate and punishments that have already been meted out to so many. All of this is true, but as with everything, they should look at the matter from both sides. Would Christians act any differently if they were in our place? Could anyone, regardless of whether they're Jews or Christians, remain silent in the face of the German pressure? Everyone knows it's practically impossible, so why do they ask the impossible of the Jews? It's being said in underground circles that the German Jews who immigrated to Holland before the war and have now been sent to Poland shouldn't be allowed to return here. They were granted the right to asylum in Holland, but once Hitler is gone, they should go back to Germany. When you hear that, you begin to wonder why we're fighting this long and difficult war. We're always being told that we're fighting for freedom, truth, and justice. The war isn't even over, and there's dissension, and Jews are regarded as lesser beings. Oh, it's sad, very sad, that the old adage has been confirmed for the umpteenth time. What one Christian does in his own responsibility, what one Jew does, reflects all Jews. To be honest, I can't understand how the Dutch, a nation of good, honest, upright people, can sit in judgment on us this way they do, on us, the most oppressed, unfortunate, and pitiful people in all the world. I have only one hope, that this anti-Semitism is just a passing thing, that the Dutch will show their true colors, that they'll never waver from what they know in their hearts to be just, for this is unjust. And if they ever carry out the terrible threat, the meager handful of Jews still left in Holland will have to go. We too will have to shoulder our bundles and move on, away from this beautiful country which once so kindly took us in and now turns its back on us. I love Holland. Once I hoped it would become a fatherland to me, since I had lost my own, and I hope so still. Yours, Anne M. Frank.